There is a strange moment that visits almost every human being, usually late at night when the world finally grows quiet. The notifications stop, the conversations end, the lights dim, and yet instead of peace, something unsettling appears. A restlessness, a subtle dissatisfaction, a feeling that even after achieving, striving, improving, and surviving, something inside still feels unsettled. The mind does not feel at home. It feels restless, hungry, and strangely unhappy without a clear reason. This is not failure. This is not weakness. And according to both modern neuroscience and ancient Buddhist wisdom, this is not a personal flaw. This is a design feature of the mind itself. The Buddha noticed this more than 2,500 years ago, sitting silently under the Bodhi tree, long before brain scans, psychology labs, or stress hormones had names. He observed that the human mind, when left untrained, naturally drifts toward dissatisfaction. It searches for happiness in places that can never permanently hold it. And science, astonishingly, has now begun to confirm what he discovered through direct inner observation. Modern neuroscience tells us that the human brain evolved not to make us happy, but to keep us alive. Survival, not satisfaction, is its primary goal. The brain is wired to scan for threats, compare outcomes, and anticipate problems. This ancient survival mechanism helped our ancestors stay alert in dangerous environments. But in the modern world, where physical threats are fewer, the same mechanism quietly turns inward. The mind begins hunting not for predators, but for problems in our own lives. This is why happiness, when it arrives, feels temporary. This is why even good moments carry a subtle tension, as if something might go wrong at any second. The brain is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. But what the Buddha realized, and what science is now beginning to echo, is that survival mode thinking is not the same as living wisely. The Buddha called this state dukkha. The word is often translated as suffering, but that translation is incomplete. Dukkha is more subtle. It is the persistent feeling that something is off, that life is never quite enough, that even pleasure does not fully satisfy. Neuroscience calls this hedonic adaptation. Psychology calls it the happiness treadmill. Buddhism calls it the restless mind. When the brain experiences something pleasurable, dopamine is released. But dopamine is not the chemical of happiness. It is the chemical of wanting. It pushes us to seek more, not to feel content. As soon as a desire is fulfilled, dopamine levels drop, and the mind begins searching again. This creates a loop. Desire, pleasure, fading satisfaction, new desire. The Buddha observed this loop long before dopamine had a name. He simply noticed that craving leads not to peace, but to repetition. What is deeply unsettling and deeply liberating is realizing that your unhappiness may not be caused by your circumstances at all. It may be caused by the way the mind has learned to relate to experience. The Buddha did not teach that life is miserable. He taught that the untrained mind turns life into a struggle. Modern psychology confirms this. Studies show that the mind wanders nearly half the time, and when it does, people report lower levels of happiness, regardless of what they are doing. The mind leaves the present moment and moves into memory or imagination, regret or worry, replay or prediction. The body may be safe, fed and supported, but the mind lives in a future that has not happened or a past that cannot be changed. The Buddha called this the illusion of permanence. The belief that if we just reach the next milestone, the next relationship, the next level of security, then the mind will finally rest. But the brain does not rest when it reaches a goal. It recalibrates. It raises the baseline. It moves the finish line. Neuroscience shows that the reward system quickly normalizes new achievements, pushing us to seek more stimulation. The Buddha described the same phenomenon as thirst that grows when you try to quench it with salt water. This is why the modern world, despite unprecedented comfort, reports rising levels of anxiety, depression, and emotional exhaustion. We have solved many external problems, but we have not learned how to work with the mind itself. We have trained the intellect, strengthened the body, optimized productivity, but left the inner world largely unexplored. The Buddha's insight was not pessimistic, it was profoundly compassionate. He did not say the mind is the enemy, he said the mind is untrained, and like any powerful instrument, when left without guidance, it creates chaos instead of harmony. Science now supports this idea through neuroplasticity. The brain is not fixed. The patterns of thought that create suffering are learned, and what is learned can be unlearned. Brain imaging studies show that meditation and mindfulness practices physically alter the structure of the brain. Areas associated with fear and stress shrink, while regions linked to emotional regulation, compassion, and awareness grow stronger. The Buddha did not have MRI machines, but he observed the same transformation through lived experience. The mind stays unhappy, not because it is evil, weak, or flawed, but because it constantly seeks stability in a world defined by change. The Buddha taught impermanence as a fundamental truth. Everything changes. Bodies age, emotions rise and fall, circumstances shift, relationships evolve. When the mind demands permanence from impermanent things, it creates suffering. Science calls this cognitive rigidity. Buddhism calls it attachment. Attachment is not love. Attachment is dependence. It is the belief that something outside of you must remain unchanged for you to feel okay inside. When that belief is challenged, anxiety appears. When it breaks, grief appears. The Buddha did not teach detachment as indifference. He taught it as freedom from the illusion that happiness can be held still. Neuroscience shows that the brain constantly predicts the future. It builds models of how things should be. When reality deviates from these predictions, stress hormones are released. Cortisol rises. The body enters a state of tension. Over time, this creates chronic stress, inflammation, and illness. The Buddha observed the same process internally and taught that suffering arises not from pain itself, but from resistance to pain. Pain is inevitable. Aging, loss, uncertainty, and change are part of being alive. But suffering, according to both Buddhism and modern psychology, is largely optional. It arises when the mind argues with reality instead of understanding it. The unhappiness of this mind is often quiet. It hides behind productivity, entertainment, and constant stimulation. We distract ourselves not because life is unbearable, but because silence reveals the mind's restlessness. The Buddha encouraged silence not as escape, but as revelation. When you sit quietly, you begin to see the patterns that normally run unnoticed. The grasping, the judging, the comparing, the endless commentary. Science calls this the default mode network, a system in the brain that activates when we are not focused on a task. It is responsible for self-referential thinking, rumination, and narrative identity. Overactivity in this network is linked to depression and anxiety. Meditation has been shown to quiet this network, creating a sense of spaciousness and peace. The Buddha taught this long ago as the practice of observing the mind without becoming lost in it. The mind stays unhappy because it believes its thoughts are facts. But thoughts are events, not truths. They arise and pass, shaped by conditioning, memory, and biology. When you believe every thought, you live inside a constant story of lack, threat, and comparison. The Buddha taught that freedom begins when you see thoughts as clouds passing through awareness, not commands you must obey. This realization is not abstract philosophy. It has profound implications for health. Chronic mental stress weakens the immune system, disrupts sleep, damages the cardiovascular system, and accelerates aging. When the mind learns to rest in awareness rather than chase outcomes, the body responds with balance. Heart rate variability improves, inflammation decreases, hormones regulate. Peace is not just spiritual, it is physiological. The Buddha never separated wisdom from health. He understood that a calm mind supports a healthy body, and a healthy body supports a calm mind. Modern integrative medicine is rediscovering this truth. Practices rooted in mindfulness are now prescribed for pain management, trauma recovery, anxiety, and even chronic illness. But the most radical part of the Buddha's teaching is this: the mind does not need to become happy, it needs to become free. Happiness that depends on conditions will always be unstable. Freedom comes from understanding how the mind works and no longer being enslaved by its habits. This is not about suppressing thoughts or forcing positivity. It is about seeing clearly. Seeing that craving does not lead to peace. Seeing that resistance amplifies pain. Seeing that awareness itself is already calm even when thoughts are turbulent. Science now recognizes this as metacognition, the ability to observe mental processes without being overwhelmed by them. As this understanding deepens, something extraordinary begins to happen. The mind still thinks, but it no longer dominates. Emotions still arise, but they no longer define identity. Life still changes, but it no longer feels like a personal attack. This is not numbness. It is clarity. It is not escape. It is intimacy with reality. The Buddha did not promise a life without challenges. He offered a way to meet life without unnecessary suffering. Neuroscience does not contradict this. It confirms it. The unhappy mind is not a mystery. It is a system following its programming. And like any system, it can be understood, trained, and gently transformed. As we move forward, the question shifts. If the mind stays unhappy because of how it is conditioned, what happens when we stop feeding the patterns that keep it restless? What happens when awareness becomes stronger than habit? What happens when the mind learns to rest instead of chase? That is where this journey truly begins. The moment you begin to see how the mind creates its own unhappiness, something subtle shifts. There is less blame, less self-judgment. A quiet curiosity replaces frustration. If the mind is conditioned, then perhaps suffering is not personal. Perhaps it is mechanical. And if it is mechanical, then it can be understood. The Buddha's next insight went even deeper. He saw that beneath restlessness and dissatisfaction lies a powerful illusion, one so familiar that it is rarely questioned. The illusion of me. The sense that there is a solid, fixed self at the center of experience that must be protected, improved, validated, hesanated, and fulfilled. Modern psychology calls this the constructed self. Neuroscience shows that what we call I is not a single entity in the brain, but a collection of processes. Memory, sensation, emotion, prediction, and narrative all combine to create a feeling of identity. But there is no central controller, no permanent core. The Buddha observed this directly and called it anatta, or non-self, not meaning that you do not exist, but that the self you think you are is far more fluid and conditional than it appears. The mind stays unhappy because it is constantly trying to secure this imagined self. It seeks approval to strengthen it, possessions to define it, achievements to prove it, and comparisons to locate it in relation to others. When the self feels threatened, anxiety arises. When it feels diminished, sadness appears. When it feels superior, pride appears. The emotional landscape of the mind revolves around defending and feeding this sense of identity. Neuroscience shows that social rejection activates the same pain centers in the brain as physical injury. The self is experienced as something that can be wounded. The Buddha noticed the same phenomenon internally. He saw that suffering arises not only from physical pain, but from psychological injury to identity. Insult, loss of status, failure, and comparison hurt because they threaten the story we tell about who we are. Desire plays a central role in this process. But desire is not only about material things, it is about becoming successful, becoming loved, becoming secure, becoming special. The mind believes that once it becomes the right version of itself, peace will finally arrive. This is where the illusion tightens its grip. Psychology calls this conditional self-worth, the belief that your value depends on outcomes. Buddhism calls it craving for becoming. The Buddha saw that as long as the mind is trying to become something else, it cannot rest. It is always in the future, negotiating its worth through effort and comparison. Science confirms that the brain is future-oriented. It simulates possible outcomes constantly. This predictive function is useful for planning, but when it becomes fused with identity, it creates chronic dissatisfaction. The present moment is never enough because the mind is always measuring it against a better imagined future. The Buddha called this restlessness. Neuroscience calls it anticipatory stress. The mind's unhappiness is often not loud. It is subtle and persistent. A low-level sense of inadequacy, a feeling of being behind, a quiet fear of missing out. Even moments of joy are shadowed by the thought that they will end. This is not pessimism. It is the natural result of clinging to impermanent experiences to define a permanent self. The Buddha observed that the self is not an object you possess. It is a process that unfolds moment by moment. When the mind identifies with thoughts, it becomes anxious. When it identifies with emotions, it becomes unstable. When it identifies with roles, it becomes fragile. Science now shows that identity is context-dependent. Different neural networks activate depending on situation, mood, and environment. There is no single you running the show. This realization can feel unsettling at first. The self feels like the ground beneath your feet. But the Buddha did not reveal this truth to destabilize you. He revealed it to free you. When you see that the self is a process, not a possession, you stop trying to protect it at all costs. Life becomes lighter, more fluid, less defensive. The mind stays unhappy because it takes itself too seriously. Every thought feels personal. Every emotion feels defining. Every setback feels like a verdict. But when awareness grows, something remarkable happens. Thoughts are still present, but they are no longer believed automatically. Emotions still arise, but they are allowed to move. Identity becomes flexible instead of rigid. Neuroscience calls this psychological flexibility. It is one of the strongest predictors of mental health, the ability to experience thoughts and emotions without being dominated by them. Buddhism cultivated this flexibility through insight and mindfulness long before it became a clinical concept. Desire itself is not the enemy. The Buddha did not teach the elimination of desire, but the understanding of it. Desire becomes suffering when it is rooted in identity, when wanting becomes a demand, when outcomes become conditions for self-worth. The mind says, "I will be okay when," and peace is postponed indefinitely. This is why mindfulness is not about relaxation alone. It is about insight, seeing how desire operates, seeing how identity forms around it, seeing how suffering is constructed moment by moment. Science now uses mindfulness-based therapies to treat addiction, because addiction is not just about substances. It is about the mind's relationship with craving. The unhappy mind is always negotiating with life. It bargains with reality. If this happens, then I'll be happy. If that doesn't happen, I won't be okay. The Buddha called this conditional happiness. Neuroscience shows that such mental patterns keep the stress response activated. The body remains in a state of vigilance, waiting for conditions to align. The unhappy mind is always negotiating with life. It bargains with reality. If this happens, then I'll be happy. If that doesn't happen, I won't be okay. The Buddha called this conditional happiness. Neuroscience shows that such mental patterns keep the stress response activated. The body remains in a state of vigilance, waiting for conditions to align. But conditions are never stable. Life is movement. Change is constant. When happiness depends on stability, it remains fragile. The Buddha offered a radical alternative: happiness as understanding, peace as acceptance, freedom as clarity. This does not mean passivity, it means engagement without attachment, action without obsession, caring without clinging. The mind learns to participate in life without trying to control it. Science shows that this reduces stress, improves emotional regulation, and enhances resilience. As awareness deepens, the sense of self begins to soften. You still function, you still have preferences, goals, and values, but they no longer define your worth. The inner narrative becomes quieter. The mind no longer needs to prove itself constantly. This is not loss, it is relief. The Buddha described this as laying down a heavy burden, the burden of constantly becoming. Neuroscience shows that when self-referential thinking decreases, activity in stress-related brain networks decreases as well. The body feels safer. The mind feels more spacious. The unhappiness of the mind is not solved by fixing the self. It is resolved by seeing through the illusion that the self needs fixing in the first place. This insight is not intellectual. It is experiential. It grows through observation, patience, and kindness toward the mind's habits. As this understanding unfolds, a deeper question emerges. If the self is not fixed and desire does not lead to peace, what remains when the mind stops chasing and defending? What is present when identity loosens its grip? That question points toward a deeper layer of experience, one the Buddha described as awareness itself. Not the content of the mind, but the space in which content appears. Science is only beginning to explore this dimension, but its implications for health, healing, and inner freedom are profound. When the mind stops chasing and defending, something quietly remains. It does not announce itself. It does not demand attention. It has been present all along, beneath every thought, emotion, and sensation. The Buddha called it awareness. Modern neuroscience calls it meta-awareness, or present moment consciousness. Whatever name is used, its effect is unmistakable. When awareness becomes primary, the mind begins to heal. Most people live inside the content of their minds. Thoughts feel like commands. Emotions feel like identity. Sensations feel personal. Awareness is so close, so intimate that it is overlooked. Yet it is the one element of experience that does not change. Thoughts rise and fall. Emotions fluctuate. The body ages, but awareness remains steady, like the sky behind shifting clouds. The Buddha did not ask people to stop thinking. He invited them to notice the difference between being lost in thought and being aware of thought. This small shift has enormous consequences. Neuroscience shows that when attention moves from narrative thinking to direct experience, activity in stress-related brain networks decreases. The brain begins to operate in a more integrated and balanced way. This is not mystical speculation. Brain scans show that mindfulness practice reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center. At the same time, connectivity increases in regions associated with emotional regulation and compassion. The nervous system shifts from constant alertness into a state of safety. The body begins to repair itself. The Buddha understood that suffering is not only mental, it is embodied. Tension lives in the muscles, fear lives in the breath, anxiety lives in the gut. When awareness enters these areas without judgment, the body releases what it has been holding. Healing is not forced. It happens naturally when resistance dissolves. Modern trauma research confirms this. The body holds unprocessed stress. When experience is met with awareness instead of avoidance, the nervous system completes its stress cycles. Safety is restored. This is why mindfulness is now used in trauma therapy. It allows the body to feel without being overwhelmed. The unhappy mind is often trying to escape discomfort. It distracts, numbs, or suppresses. But suppression does not eliminate pain. It stores it. The Buddha taught that what we resist persists. Science shows that emotional avoidance increases physiological stress. Awareness does the opposite. It allows sensations to move, emotions to complete, and thoughts to pass. Awareness is not passive, it is deeply engaged. It meets experience without trying to manipulate it. This changes the relationship between the mind and reality. Instead of fighting what is, the mind learns to be present with it. This presence itself is calming. The nervous system reads it as safety. The Buddha described awareness as the middle way. Not indulgence, not suppression, just seeing clearly. This clarity dissolves confusion. The mind no longer reacts blindly, it responds intelligently. Science calls this response flexibility. Buddhism calls it wisdom. When awareness becomes stable, the sense of time begins to change. The mind is no longer constantly projecting into the future or replaying the past. It rests more often in the present moment. Neuroscience shows that present moment attention improves immune function, lowers blood pressure, and enhances sleep quality. The body thrives when the mind is here. Awareness also transforms the experience of pain. Pain is real, but suffering is amplified by mental resistance. The Buddha taught that the first arrow is physical pain. The second arrow is mental struggle. Awareness removes the second arrow. Science shows that mindfulness reduces pain perception by changing how the brain processes sensory input. This does not mean pain disappears. It means it no longer dominates. The mind creates space around sensation. In that space, resilience grows. The body relaxes, healing accelerates. The most profound effect of awareness is its impact on identity. When awareness is present, the self becomes less rigid. Thoughts and emotions are seen as events, not definitions. The story of me loosens. This brings relief. The mind no longer needs to defend itself constantly. Neuroscience shows that reduced self-referential thinking correlates with increased well-being. Buddhism taught this long ago. When the sense of self softens, compassion naturally arises. Without a rigid center, experience is shared. Connection replaces comparison. Awareness is inherently kind. It does not judge, it does not rush. It allows. This kindness has physiological effects. Studies show that self-compassion reduces cortisol and increases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. The body feels supported, the mind feels safe. The Buddha emphasized that awareness must be gentle. Force creates tension. Curiosity creates openness. When awareness is applied gently, the mind relaxes. Resistance melts. Insight arises naturally. As awareness deepens, the mind begins to recognize a peace that is not dependent on circumstances. This peace is not excitement. It is not pleasure. It is steadiness. A sense of being okay even when life is uncertain. Science calls this baseline well-being. Buddhism calls it equanimity. Equanimity does not mean indifference. It means balance. The mind can feel joy without clinging and sadness without collapse. Emotions move freely. The nervous system remains regulated. Health improves. The Buddha did not teach awareness as a technique. He taught it as a way of being. Science now recognizes that mindfulness is not something you do for a few minutes a day. It is a quality of attention that can permeate life. Walking, eating, listening, breathing. When awareness becomes continuous, the mind stays grounded. This grounding has profound health benefits. Chronic stress is one of the leading contributors to disease. Awareness interrupts stress at its root. The mind stops generating unnecessary threats. The body stops releasing excess stress hormones. Healing processes activate. Awareness also changes how the mind relates to thoughts. Thoughts lose their authority. They are seen as suggestions, not commands. This reduces anxiety and depression. Cognitive therapies now incorporate mindfulness because insight alone is not enough. The relationship to thought must change. The Buddha taught that liberation is not achieved by changing thoughts, but by changing the relationship to them. Science confirms this. Meta-awareness allows thoughts to arise without triggering emotional cascades. The mind becomes spacious. As this spaciousness grows, a quiet joy emerges. Not excitement, but contentment. Not achievement, but ease. This joy is not dependent on success or approval. It arises from being present, from no longer fighting the moment. This joy is deeply healing. It nourishes the nervous system. It supports immune function. It improves sleep and digestion. Peace is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity. The unhappy mind becomes unhappy because it is always somewhere else. Awareness brings it home. Home is not a place, it is a state of being, a recognition that this moment, just as it is workable. The Buddha taught that enlightenment is not becoming something special. It is seeing clearly what has always been here. Science is beginning to understand this. Consciousness is not created by effort, it is revealed by letting go. As awareness stabilizes, life does not become perfect, but it becomes intimate. Challenges are met with clarity. Emotions are met with kindness. Thoughts are met with curiosity. The mind becomes a friend instead of an enemy. This is not the end of the journey, it is the foundation. Awareness opens the door, but living wisely requires integration. How do we bring this understanding into daily life, relationships, work, and health? How do we live in a world that constantly pulls attention outward while staying grounded inward? That is where the final part of this journey leads. Toward integration. Toward living the Buddha's wisdom in a modern world, supported by science, guided by awareness, and rooted in compassion. When awareness becomes steady, life does not suddenly become silent or slow. The world continues to move. Responsibilities remain. Relationships still challenge. The body still ages. But something fundamental changes in how life is met. Instead of reacting from habit, the mind begins to respond from clarity. This is where the Buddha's wisdom stops being an inner experience alone and becomes a way of living. The greatest misunderstanding about inner peace is that it requires withdrawing from life. The Buddha never taught escape. He taught engagement without confusion. Science supports this. Psychological well-being is not about avoiding stress, but about regulating the nervous system while remaining active in the world. Awareness does not remove challenges, it changes the relationship to them. When the mind is no longer consumed by self-protection and future anxiety, attention becomes available for connection. Relationships begin to feel different. Instead of using others to confirm identity, the mind meets them as they are. Listening deepens. Reactivity softens. The need to win, prove, or defend fades. This is not moral discipline. It is a natural result of reduced self-centered thinking. Neuroscience shows that empathy increases when self-referential processing decreases. Buddhism taught the same truth through compassion. When the sense of me versus the world loosens, care arises spontaneously. This care is not exhausting. It is energizing. The heart opens because it is no longer armored. Health is deeply affected by this shift. Chronic emotional stress is one of the strongest predictors of illness. When the mind operates from constant resistance, the body remains in a low-grade fight-or-flight state. Inflammation rises, immunity weakens, awareness restores balance. The parasympathetic nervous system activates. Repair becomes possible. The Buddha understood that wisdom without compassion is incomplete. Awareness without kindness becomes cold. This is why he emphasized loving kindness alongside insight. Science now shows that practices cultivating compassion improve heart health, reduce depression, and increase longevity. Kindness is not just ethical, it is biological. Living from clarity means allowing emotions without being ruled by them. Anger may arise, but it does not take over. Sadness may appear, but it does not define identity. Joy comes, but it is not clung to. This emotional fluidity is a sign of mental health. Psychology calls it emotional regulation. Buddhism calls it equanimity. Equanimity does not numb life, it deepens it. Experiences are felt more fully because the mind is not bracing against them. Pleasure becomes sweeter because it is not feared to end. Pain becomes workable because it is not resisted. The mind trusts itself to meet whatever arises. This trust is crucial. The unhappy mind does not trust life or itself. It constantly prepares for threat. Awareness builds trust through direct experience. Again and again, the mind sees that emotions pass, thoughts change, and the present moment is survivable. Over time, fear loosens its grip. The Buddha taught that wisdom is seeing things as they are. Science echoes this through acceptance-based therapies. Acceptance is not resignation. It is accurate perception. When the mind stops arguing with reality, energy is freed. That energy can be used for creativity, service, and joy. Living from clarity also transforms work and ambition. Goals no longer define worth. Effort is applied without obsession. Success is enjoyed without attachment. Failure is met without collapse. The nervous system remains regulated even under pressure. This is sustainable performance, not burnout-driven striving. Neuroscience shows that intrinsic motivation thrives when stress is regulated. Buddhism taught that right effort arises naturally when craving is understood. When action comes from clarity rather than fear, it feels aligned instead of draining. The sense of meaning also changes. Meaning is no longer sought in future achievements alone. It is found in presence, in how moments are lived, in how others are treated, in how the mind relates to experience. This kind of meaning is stable because it does not depend on outcomes. The Buddha did not promise constant happiness. He offered freedom from unnecessary suffering. Science confirms that lasting well-being is not about maximizing pleasure, but about minimizing internal conflict. Awareness resolves conflict at its root by dissolving misperception. As clarity deepens, gratitude arises naturally. Not forced positivity, but a quiet appreciation of being alive, of breathing, of awareness itself. Gratitude has measurable health benefits. It lowers stress hormones and improves heart health. The body responds to appreciation as safety. This way of living is not achieved overnight. It unfolds gradually, through repeated moments of noticing, through patience with old habits, through kindness toward the mind's conditioning. The Buddha emphasized practice not as discipline, but as familiarity, becoming familiar with awareness until it feels like home. Modern life constantly pulls attention outward. Screens, noise, urgency, comparison. Living from clarity means returning again and again to presence. Not perfectly, gently. Each return strengthens neural pathways associated with calm and insight. Science calls this neuroplasticity. Buddhism called it cultivation. The unhappy mind was never the enemy. It was a messenger. It pointed toward misunderstanding, toward misaligned attention, toward craving and resistance. When understood, it no longer needs to shout. Peace, then, is not something you achieve. It is something you uncover. It was always beneath the noise. Awareness reveals it. Science explains it. The Buddha embodied it. This is not ancient wisdom made obsolete by modern life. It is ancient wisdom finally being understood through modern language. The mind stays unhappy, not because life is wrong, but because it has forgotten how to rest in understanding. As you move forward, remember this. You do not need to fix yourself. You need to see clearly. You do not need to escape life. You need to meet it with awareness. Happiness is not a destination. It is a byproduct of wisdom. If this journey resonated with you, if something in you felt recognized or relieved, it means awareness is already present. Trust it. Return to it. Let it guide you gently. And if you wish to continue exploring this path of inner peace, healing, and timeless wisdom, subscribe to Divine and Spiritual 0369. Here, science and spirituality meet, not to impress the mind, but to free it.